You had all these Catholic apologists running around and talk about the church of 2,000 years. The church, we're the church of 2,000 years. No, you are not. You have deceived yourselves into thinking that. That's why I brought up the Council of Nicaea. And I brought up so many dogmatic teachings that Rome now propounds that would have been utterly unknown to the bishops that met at the Council of Nicaea. You can't call yourself the church of 2,000 years when you teach as dogma, de fide dogma, things that they had never even conceived of, never even thought about, and certainly did not believe. You can't do it. It's fantasy. It's historical and theological fantasy, and nothing more. And nothing more. So, with that in mind, I am thankful for one thing. Alan Rule linked to the dividing line. The whole thing. I think that's wonderful. It's unusual, but it's wonderful. Because I think anyone else who watches it will go, well, you only focused on just one little thing here. That was illustrative of a whole wider argument you seem to be missing, but that's okay. The important part of the above video is about 19 minutes. He mentions in the 300s, during the Donatist controversy, the question of ex opere operato versus, the question was ex opere operato versus ex opere operantis. Actually, I just mentioned in passing, in light of William Lane Craig's statement, actually it wasn't him, it was his co-host that I believe mentioned something along these lines. And I just basically pointed out that the issue in the Donatist controversy was the ordination of a bishop. It was not the priesthood issue in regards to ability to consecrate elements and stuff like that. Again, church history is never two-dimensional. It's always three-dimensional. There are lines that twist together and come together in the most amazing ways to end up creating certain beliefs and understandings. And I've used the illustration of purgatory, but when it comes to priesthood, same thing. There were a number of things, there were a number of biblical truths that had to become lost or de-emphasized, and unbiblical traditions that had to become exalted to bring together the strands of belief that would allow the eventual development of the Roman Catholic concept. But what's really going to be useful here, if I ever get around to it, I apologize. One of the things that I think is most illustrative of the most dangerous and anti-Christian nature of Roman Catholicism is the fact that Roman Catholic apologists will parallel divine truths with their human traditions and use this to deceive people. Most of you know, well, actually most of you wouldn't know. People who have been following this program for a lengthy period of time would know that I find it extremely offensive when the deep divine truth of the doctrine of the Trinity is paralleled to the absurd dogmatic pronouncements of Roman Catholicism. Most people gasp, as they should. Even Roman Catholics gasp, but they shouldn't, when we play that clip, and I should have that clip queued up. I'm going to have to track it down. It's certainly on YouTube. But the clip of Jerry Matitix in one of our early debates saying that you have the same epistemological warrant for believing in the bodily assumption of Mary as you have for believing in the resurrection of Jesus Christ. The exact same epistemological warrant. And then he went on to explain, you believe in the resurrection because the church tells you so. And you believe in the bodily assumption of Mary because the church tells you so. Now, that to me is one of the greatest illustrations of the horrific danger of Romanism that I could ever give to you. Because the bodily assumption of Mary is a man-made, ridiculous, non-apostolic myth. It was not believed by any of the apostles. It was not believed by anybody that came after the apostles. It was one of my favorite examples of debate was when I went through with Jerry in that very same debate. Jerry Matitix, can you show me anyone in the 2nd century that believed in the bodily assumption of Mary? Can you show me anybody in the 3rd century? Finally, Mr. White, I don't have to prove to you that everyone back then believed these things. And my response was, Jerry, I'll take just one. And the place went up in applause because everybody saw the same thing. Everybody saw the double standards he was operating on. And you need to understand that what Alan Rule is saying here is, I'm the one with double standards because I believe in doctrinal development. What they use that for is to come to the conclusion of what Jerry Matitix said. Because unless Alan Rule is a non-Orthodox Roman Catholic, then he believes de fide in the bodily assumption of Mary. He just pointed out, I never mentioned the Trinity once in the post. I mentioned the two natures of Christ, the hypostatic union, and the two wills. Haven't gotten to it yet, Alan. I'm talking about my own history here. But thank you for pointing it out. And thank you for pointing out that I'm right on the beam with what your arguments are and what they result in. And they result in the utter overthrow of even the necessity of having Scripture, the need for Scripture, let alone the sufficiency of Scripture, and lead to the point where you have dogmas, such as the bodily assumption, unknown to anyone as a Christian belief in the first centuries of the church. A pure myth without the slightest bit of biblical evidence to it. And yet, it is elevated to the point of the resurrection of Jesus Christ because of the authority claims of the Roman Catholic Church. That is not only an overthrow of the apostolic gospel, but it is, in reality, the acceptance of continuing revelation. That's what it is. You have to accept that, even though it's painfully obvious the early church did not teach it. You can misquote Paul writing to the Thessalonians all you want about an epistle from us, as if that has something to do with tradition. There is no way that you could ever even begin to substantiate the idea that what was passed on to the Thessalonians had anything to do with the Immaculate Conception, the bodily assumption, papal infallibility, or anything like it. These are dogmas that cannot, by any honest person, be called apostolic, by any stretch of the imagination. Anyone who actually believes in apostolic